Ranga Nityananda, Hare Krishna. So, this morning, we are going to continue from yesterday's class. And yesterday's class was entitled, or was about, deepening our relationship with Srila Prabhupada. And we had discussed the importance of Prabhupada's central position in Iskcon, which means, central position means his teachings remain central, his mood remains central, his mission remains central within the hearts and minds of everyone. And everyone who's part of Iskcon has a relationship with Prabhupada. He is everyone's guru. And that relationship is very important, and it shouldn't be minimized. But I don't think anyone really tries to minimize it. I don't think anyone minimizes their relationship with Prabhupada, but they may not cultivate it. And so I don't think any of you would think that I am minimizing my relationship with Prabhupada, but I think you might think you're not cultivating it as well as you need to. So we had spoken about that yesterday. If you weren't here, you can listen. And I think we need to go over some things because it may be that, excuse me, everything was not completely understood. And there's some things I said that I think need clarification. Excuse me, somehow I don't have a voice. I don't know why. I might have been driving for 2 hours with air conditioning or allergy or something. So hopefully my voice will come back as I speak. Hopefully. So there's a couple points I wanted to make yesterday because I think they could have been misunderstood. I think actually they probably were misunderstood. We were talking about Prabhupada's desire to create an organization, and then organization being the vehicle for his instructions and being the vehicle for spreading Krishna consciousness. Within that organization, he made many disciples, almost 5,000, and some of the disciples left, but some of them left and created their own organizations or became part of other organizations. And so how do we deal with those devotees? How do we understand their position? Because I think from what I said yesterday, it could have been misunderstood that what they've done is so bad that they should not be considered as followers of Prabhupada, or maybe they should be considered as offensive to Prabhupada, or breaking Prabhupada's instructions and so forth. And I fear, and I think rightly so, that if we have those attitudes and we don't understand things more in a broad way, in a more compassionate way, we're going to go into the future with a very toxic and dysfunctional relationship with organizations other than Iskcon, who have the same purposes of Iskcon, which is to give people Krishna consciousness, who are more or less doing what Iskcon does and who are aligned with Srila Prabhupada. So I just wanted to address that because I don't want anyone to misunderstand, because I think this is an important point. Let me give you a little history. Hare Krishna. Let me give you a little history. Some of our godbrothers left Iskcon for various reasons. Some of them took Siksha gurus from Srila Prabhupada's godbrothers, and at some point Iskcon told them that if you have such and such person as your Siksha guru, you can't remain in Iskcon, and they felt a deep connection with that person. They felt that person was helping them, and they felt that person was helping them get closer to Prabhupada. And so they had to make a distinction. And so they left Iskcon for that reason. Some of them were in situations where they were caught in the middle of controversies within Iskcon, things which were not being properly done in Iskcon, and for reasons I can't explain exactly historically, they were kind of pushed out of Iskcon. And they didn't actually want to leave, but they were kind of pushed out. Also, due to allegiance, I don't say allegiance, but due to the fact that they had Siksha gurus outside of Iskcon. So there were people who were loyal followers of Iskcon who were kind of pushed out due to that allegiance, and they couldn't give it up, that these persons were their Siksha gurus. And Iskcon felt that that was a bad influence, even though Prabhupada said we could consult with them, but many felt that that was just creating havoc and problems, and that association was unhealthy. And so they were told, if you keep that association, you have to leave. So they left, and they were preachers, some of them very successful preachers, and so they formed their own organization. Naturally, because they were preaching, they needed an organization, and was with some reluctance. And they are disciples of Prabhupada. Prabhupada is guiding them, and they're helping people become Krishna conscious, and they're teaching the same things we teach. Some things may have been adjusted, and there's some controversy, perhaps, over that. But my point is that as we go into the future, it's not that Prabhupada wanted us to turn against anyone. Even during Prabhupada's time, one of his disciples left, and basically became a guru. I don't believe he was initiating during Prabhupada's presence, but more or less like a guru, leader of an organization. And Prabhupada didn't want us to create any factions or ill feelings. So when we say what Prabhupada wanted, and then it appears that some people are doing things that he didn't want, we can become critical, which is not what Prabhupada wanted us to do. We understand that Prabhupada wanted us to work within Iskcon and make it work. We also understand that some people could not work in Iskcon for various reasons. And they are good devotees, and they are making other people devotees, and it would be better if we were all doing this together. No, we're not talking about Krishna West. It would be better if we can working together under Iskcon. Now, some senior devotees have suggested, and maybe someday this will happen. It doesn't appear to be happening now. It doesn't appear that the GBC feels this is desirable. Of course, I don't know discussions that surrounded this topic, but some of it has suggested that because we have many Gaudiya or Krishna conscious organizations, we should create a kind of brother. I don't know what do you. I'm looking for the word. It's not affiliate. We can use the word affiliate because we have affiliates in Iskcon. Affiliate means you're a devotee, you're a disciple of Prabhupada, a follower of Prabhupada, but you're not governed by the GBC. You have differences or disagreements, or you don't want to be controlled. You have your own organization. It's in your own name, separately incorporated. So you become an affiliate. So your purposes are the same. You're Iskcon friendly. So some devotees have suggested that some of these organizations, which were started by our godbrothers, become affiliates of Iskcon. So Iskcon becomes a broader body, and then they can benefit and we can benefit from one another's association. And it wouldn't be so taboo to hear from them or visit them, and it wouldn't be taboo for them to visit us and share with us what they've learned and what they understand. That hasn't happened yet. There's a definite concern about intermingling with organizations who have also have other gurus as Siksha gurus or even Diksha gurus for some. So how that goes in the future, that we'll have to see. I can't say how that will go. I think the relationships need to be better. And the GBC has, at this point, suggested that people who are associated with other gurus outside of Iskcon should work within those organizations. Although some still work within Iskcon. They feel that would be more seamless and smooth if they worked within the other organizations. So that's where it stands now. It could perhaps become more evolved in other ways in the future, but that's not the point of this discussion. The point of this discussion is that for various reasons, our God brothers have other organizations. We should be respectful, we shouldn't be critical and think, oh, they're offending Prabhupada. And we don't know what they're doing. We don't know how dear they are to Prabhupada. We can't make that assumption. To assume they're not following Prabhupada, to assume, although they're his disciples, they're offenders, would be, I think, offensive on our part. So we don't want to go there. That's very bad. We want to create harmonious relations within Iskcon and outside of Iskcon. And we also have to recognize that those devotees have disciples. They're good devotees, and many of those disciples are integrated or favorable to Iskcon. So we never want to criticize anyone's guru. This is an important principle. Even if anyone's bona fide guru, one who is, that we should make the assumption they're not bona fide. So anyone who's a Gaudiya Vaishnava in the modern world has some connection with Prabhupada. And especially if your guru is a follower of Srila Prabhupada and not working within Iskcon, we should not be in any way critical, at least not to the disciples. We may have some objections, we may discuss philosophically and so forth, but we should respect them, appreciate them, and especially respect the disciples of those persons. And we should not assume we are better. But we feel obligated to follow Prabhupada, and so we're doing that. We know Prabhupada wants us to remain in the institution. Some of these devotees could not, for various reasons, remain in the institution. So we feel it would have been better if they did, but we don't want to condemn them. They're great devotees. They're doing lots of preaching. So I think that's important, because if we don't see it that way, then Iskcon becomes, it'll become like Christianity. Like, you're all going to hell if you're not part of Iskcon. And I know some devotees believe that, and they believe it based on what Prabhupada said. Those who are living outside the Krishna consciousness movement are in an hallucination, that they can make advancement. And what Prabhupada meant is, those who are living outside devotee association are in an hallucination that they could make advancement. If Prabhupada meant you can't make advancement outside of Iskcon, you couldn't really philosophically back that up. And also, Prabhupada said wherever two people are together chanting Hare Krishna, that's Iskcon. So taking that in consideration, I think we have a broader definition of the Hare Krishna movement, and I've heard devotees say that when Prabhupada says you can't make advancement outside the Hare Krishna movement or outside of Iskcon, that it means anyone who's not participating in Iskcon can't make advancement. Anyone who's chanting Hare Krishna, anyone who's initiated by a bona fide guru, can make advancement. And everyone in the modern age has got Krishna consciousness, directly or indirectly, from Prabhupada. So, in a broad sense, this is the Krishna consciousness movement. So Prabhupada really meant outside of the Sangha of devotees that are coming in a bona fide disciplic succession, you can't make advancement. To say you can't would defy reality. These devotees are spreading Krishna consciousness. They're making others Krishna conscious. They're establishing temples, distributing books, and so forth. And some of them are very advanced. So we have to appreciate what they're doing, but we also understand that we have a mission. Prabhupada asked us to stay within Iskcon and keep him central to the movement. Obviously, if you have other gurus, there is the concern that Prabhupada's central position would be compromised. So in Iskcon, all the other gurus are Prabhupada's disciples, or grand disciples, or great-grand disciples, or great-great-great-grand disciples. And that's the way it will be. And that, of course, we feel is a safe position. Now, maybe in the future, these other organizations will become brother organizations or sister organizations to Iskcon. That remains to be seen. But we should remain respectful, not create factions. They chant Hare Krishna. They have the same Siddhanta we do. They're studying the same books. They're reading Prabhupada's books. Prabhupada is their spiritual master. They were initiated by him. So it would be, I think, pride on our part to minimize. Now, we understand the argument is more of a institutional argument. Of course, one may say there may be some philosophical differences that they've heard from their gurus, but there's nothing that's major. At least I don't believe it's major. Yeah. Okay, so Radhika's saying that she has heard some people say you can only go back to Godhead through Iskcon. I've never heard Prabhupada say that. And I don't know how that could be supported. Because you don't go back to Godhead through an institution, although working with the institution means you're satisfying Prabhupada because he wanted you to stay within the institution. But when one of Prabhupada's disciples left the institution, Prabhupada was not happy, but he told his devotees that don't bother them. He said they can continue outside the institution if they continue following the principles. So following the principles that Prabhupada gave us, if we chant 16 rounds, follow the regular principles, share Krishna consciousness with others, maintain deity worship and so on, we will become purified, because going back to Godhead is a matter of purification. And so we'll be purified. And I don't think it's correct to say that Prabhupada would only deliver those who are within the institution. Of course, we can say the institution and Prabhupada and Krishna are non-different. And that is true. And that it was Prabhupada's instruction to stay with the institution. But we don't always follow all the instructions perfectly, even if we stay within Iskcon. So, you could say if you don't follow Prabhupada perfectly, you can't go back to Godhead. We're all trying to follow perfectly. It's a work in progress. And Prabhupada will deliver all his disciples and disciples of disciples who are following his instructions. So I think it's more accurate to say, without following Prabhupada's instructions, you won't go back to Godhead. Someone will say, but his instruction was to stay in institution. Yeah, that's true. Prabhupada never said his God brothers would not go back to Godhead. He said that because they disobeyed the instruction to keep the Gaudiya Math together, then as a preaching movement, Gaudiya Math failed, and they therefore failed to spread Krishna consciousness around the world, as Srila Bhaktisiddhanta wanted. So it was a failure of preaching. But by following the instructions of Srila Bhakti, the other instructions, they maintained their spiritual life. Prabhupada recognized that. So, these are sensitive issues, but my point is that what is at stake here in discussing these issues is that we may become offensive and overly critical of those who leave Iskcon who are very good devotees and who are making many people Krishna conscious. They're just not doing it within the framework of Iskcon. Okay, we know that that's not the best thing. Even they left reluctantly, but due to their nature and circumstances, they saw that this would be the best for spreading Krishna consciousness. And in some cases, they've had extraordinary amounts of success in spreading Krishna consciousness. They're in some places in the same countries that Iskcon is, and they're more successful. So, they're also, Prabhupada's mercy is, Prabhupada's not going to limit his mercy to, if you leave Iskcon, you won't get it. That's not Prabhupada's nature. So, I think it's better to say that Prabhupada would like to take us back to Godhead through Iskcon, but if we are not in Iskcon, then we should still follow his instructions as he's given them. That's for sure. And to say that Prabhupada would not deliver you because you left Iskcon, I think it's a misunderstanding or an overreaction, or maybe it's a nice sentiment, but I think that is not. I don't think that attitude will be helpful for us, because we want to have nice relationships with all Vaishnava organizations. I think that's important. I think that's what Prabhupada would want. And of course, Prabhupada wanted us to help other Vaishnava organizations, and he basically wanted them to work with us under our GBC. So these other devotees will not be able to work so closely with us under the GBC. That of course is what Prabhupada wanted, but I think it would be a mistake on our part to become critical or offensive. We can say, yes, this is what Prabhupada wanted. We recognize it. They also recognize it. Circumstantially, it couldn't work out, and I'm sure this will continue in the future. It's not going to be isolated to a few devotees. We have many God brothers who cannot work within Iskcon for various reasons, and that's human nature. There will always be devotees who can't work within the organization. Maybe the organization in the future can broaden its borders to make it available for more people to work in it, but at the present moment, some people cannot work in it, and some people just can't work in organizations. All right, so what do we do? What did Prabhupada say? Okay, if you can't work in the organization, at least continue the principles which I've given you. Your 16 rounds and so forth, and distribute my books and like that. And so many devotees have left the institution, but they come to our temples, but they're not really working in the institution. They're distributing Prabhupada's books, they're doing things, but they don't, for some reason, have some issue with Iskcon. Okay, but they're still following. But some of those individuals are just doing this individually. They don't find themselves fitting in, and others have actually started organizations, so then it becomes a bigger thing. So, of course, I'm sure various leaders and God brothers and senior devotees will have various opinions about this, but the one thing that I've seen is when we have such discussions, it's sometimes immature devotees who don't know the situation and don't know the devotees involved become offensive to those people who've left Iskcon. And as I've told you before, Prabhupada has described the history of Gaudiya Math so we would not make the same mistake. But it seemed that because Prabhupada was describing that history of how they misunderstood and disobeyed the order of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, that we also had the right to criticize them. And once, when Prabhupada was describing the situation, and some disciple started to criticize them, even perhaps, I don't remember, but it could have even been repeating something Prabhupada said. Prabhupada said, you don't have a right to say that. I can say that, they're my God brothers. The relationship is different. As God brothers, we can, talk to one another about what we think we're not doing as correctly as we could. But as disciples or nieces and nephews of those gurus, he said, we can't say anything. So that's the danger. And that danger could infest the heart of younger devotees in the name of fidelity to Prabhupada and in the name of fidelity to Iskcon. So this is a problem. In my name of being a loyal follower to Prabhupada, I'm going to criticize one of his disciples who's following strictly Krishna consciousness, perhaps more so than we are, who's making many people Krishna conscious, who's opening centers and writing books, distributing books. Okay, it would have been better they'd done that within the walls of Iskcon in cooperation with GBC. That's what Prabhupada wanted. But still, we have to be very careful not to be critical of them. And it's a reality that exists. We we're not going to be able to change that reality. We're spreading Krishna consciousness. There are many gurus. There's gurus outside of Iskcon. Some people will find shelter there. It's a reality. They will come to Iskcon, even get initiated in Iskcon, and they may also find shelter in other places. It's a reality. We may not like it. We may not think it's good, but it's going to go on. So my point is, okay, let me backtrack a little bit, because I think this is really important. There will always be differences. We see the differences within Iskcon. The conservative, the liberal sides, they argue issues. And so what to speak of differences outside of Iskcon? Because at least in Iskcon, we are trying to follow certain principles and standards under the guidance of GBC. Once you're outside of Iskcon, you have a little more freedom to choose, or maybe to adjust things or change things, right? So differences will always be there. Prabhupada said they'll be there because we're different. It's just the nature. It's the nature of things that differences will be there. So, extremely important point and you find this in this theme coming up in, at least in American government, I don't know, probably the rest of the world. They call it bipartisan. Like you have two parties, two views, and you try to work together to come up with some legislation that reflects concerns of both parties and is not politically motivated. So you're not doing it to strengthen your political position to get voted in next term. You're doing it because it's the best thing. So I'm making this point that this is a reality, that there's going to be disagreement inside of Iskcon and outside, and people will leave Iskcon and people will join other organizations. Maybe as Iskcon becomes stronger, it will happen less. Maybe it happens in historical moments when some acharya appears, it's very powerful, more people will go out. If that acharya is not so charismatic or so well promoted, maybe less people will go out. Maybe you just don't know what the situation is, but you can definitely know that it's going to happen to one degree or another because it's human nature, and some people don't like organizations and don't fit in organizations, but still they're good devotees and they're dedicated to Prabhupada. And within those various organizations and even within Iskcon, there'll be differing opinions. And the point I want to make is that sometimes we think that when we see these things, our duty is just to fight one another, to correct one another. No, you're wrong. You said this is not what Prabhupada wanted. It's wrong. As if what I say is going to change them, which is really interesting for us to think, I'm going to make a statement about Ritvik, or I'm going to make a statement about liberal preaching or conservative preaching, and then all the Ritviks are going to give up Ritvik, and all the liberals will become conservative, the conservatives will become liberal. That's not going to happen. You might move things a little way. Basically, when you're talking about these things, you're preaching to the people who have faith in you, who will listen to you about it, and they're not Ritviks and they're not ultra-conservative or liberal anyway. But you're preaching to them just to help them understand these issues. But it's not that I'm going to say, oh, so-and-so's preaching is too conservative, it's not practical, and he's going to listen to it and think, oh yeah, that's a good idea. What Mahatma Prabhu said, it makes sense. I'm going to become a liberal now. I like the liberal agenda. That's not going to happen. So the issue that we face is we have to understand as best we can through our gurus, Prabhupada's teachings, how we fit in. At the same time, we're going to have to learn how to exist in an organization and with organizations outside of Iskcon who all have the same goal of spreading Krishna consciousness, so all have the same goal of understanding Srila Prabhupada, understanding the Siddhanta of our scriptures, who all have the same goal of becoming pure devotees, but have varying points of view. The real challenge is not to try to convince them that they're wrong and we're right. which is never going to happen. And if we think it's going to happen, I think we're wasting time. Yes, we should establish the truth as we understand it from Srila Prabhupada. I'm not saying we shouldn't. There may be varying siddhantas or varying views. And we, as senior devotees, leaders, it's our duty to understand as best we can what Prabhupada taught. So I'm not saying if there's some apasiddhanta, we go to sleep. No, we do state it. And Iskcon does this. Iskcon establishes this is the siddhanta on this, this is the siddhanta on that. And that's good if it's done well. But there's going to be people who say, no, I don't agree with that. And so I think the real challenge is how to have loving, friendly relationships and how to coexist without committing offense, without the need to condemn and reform. I think that's the real challenge. And how do you do that? Well, one of the ways you do that is you live Krishna consciousness as best you can, and you preach as best you can, and may the best man win. So if you say, well, my liberal agenda is the best way to preach, that's fine, show me. If next year 50 people become devotees, and the way I'm preaching, nobody becomes devotees, you win, we don't have to argue. So it's always may the best man win, show by example. And so that's important. But to condemn others, okay, maybe we may say we don't feel this is right, but we shouldn't become the catalyst for offenses. Because even if I don't agree with you, even if I think you're doing something right, does that mean you're doing something wrong? Does that mean you're not doing anything right? Of course not. You may be doing so many things right. You may be doing so many things I could learn from. But if I condemn you because I believe you have not followed Prabhupada in this one area, I will suffer due to the offense, and the disciples of that person could become upset or even lose faith in their guru. Is it our job? Do we want to break the faith of disciples in their guru? I don't think so. So I think we need a broad perspective. At the same time, we need a very clear perspective about where we stand with Prabhupada and Iskcon, and we need to be able to balance both of those. That's the thing. Now, this is just an observation that I've had and contemplated a long time, and I'm sharing that I think it's a waste of energy to try to argue and defeat someone who has very clear and determined views about something. The best energy is used to try to understand what they're doing, understand their perspective, be respectfully disagree if you must, but respect them as a Vaishnava. I think that's extremely important. Otherwise, we're going to have extremely dysfunctional organization. And part of the dysfunction is going to be how we relate to people who are out of the organization. We'll relate to it in a very dysfunctional way. And I don't think we want to turn that kind of dysfunction over to successive generations, because they could become more dysfunctional using our examples as a basis for creating all kinds of conflict with other organizations. But it's not only going to be other organizations, it's going to be within Iskcon. It's the mode with which we approach disagreement that is so important to master. And I don't think we're doing as well as we should be doing in this area. Because just like Radhika said, you'll hear something, and within the context of what that guru was saying, it makes total sense. This is Prabhupada's movement. This is what he taught. This is where we need to be Krishna conscious. People go outside, they may concoct their various ideas and so forth and so on. But to think that if someone is chanting 16 rounds and following regular principles, studying Prabhupada's books, but they've done it outside the institution, that would nullify the potency of hearing and chanting, that's not true. And certainly that could not be what they meant. They meant that this is the institution that is meant to spread Krishna consciousness. This is the institution that Prabhupada wants us to work in. This is where we will get the most mercy from Prabhupada. This is where we will be the most Krishna conscious. Of course, yeah, we can say that. But does that mean somebody outside couldn't become more Krishna conscious than we are if they have a bona fide Gaudiya Guru? No, we can't say that. There's no practical, verifiable, or philosophical reason to do that. We can just say, that's not what Prabhupada wanted us to do. Okay. I can go outside of Iskcon. The day I go outside of Iskcon, if I chant 16 rounds, follow regular principles, and continue my preaching, that will have an effect. It's just that Prabhupada wants me to do it within the organization. That's what's most pleasing to him. But if for some reason I can't do it, I just can't work within this organization, then Prabhupada would say, okay, then do it outside, but follow these principles, teach the people who follow you to follow those principles. And then, okay, so I'm not doing the best thing I should have done, but still, we're following the other principles. So we have to see things that way. And does it mean that I can't do successful preaching outside? Yeah, I could. It would be better I do it inside. I would be more successful inside, more people to reach and so forth. In theory. But even that may not be practically verifiable. Maybe outside I would be more successful. I could be more creative, nobody would bother me, less limitations. That could have downsides to it also. Up and down. So I'm not here to argue the validity of leaving Iskcon and how great your preaching will be if you leave Iskcon, because you'll have no restrictions and you can change things as needed and experiment. I'm not arguing that point. I'm arguing that some people will do that. It's inevitable. And within Iskcon, people will do that. And people are doing it even within Iskcon. And there's disagreements. But I don't think that I don't think that where we want to put our energy is into focusing how right we are and how wrong we are, but focusing more on how we're going to coexist. That's what I believe is really important. From my observation of all these controversies and everything that Prabhupada has said about it, my realization is that it would be best to put our energy into learning how to coexist with one another as well as possible. I can't say it's going to always work well, but at least if we make the effort to coexist as well as possible, it could mean, okay, you do your thing, I do my thing, and let's just keep a distance. Maybe that's the best way we coexist. But let's remain respectful as a distance. I'm not going to, if you're in my city and people come to my temple, people go to your temple, let's just be respectful. Let's not condemn one another, because that would break the faith of the individual. Let's not teach our disciples that you're bad or I'm bad. Let's just explain that, we have differences in the way we see how preaching should be done, and we feel more comfortable working in separate organizations. There are many good points in both sides, and that will be better. And from everything that I've seen in Prabhupada's dealings, that's the way he would want us to be. Now, we have our reasons why we don't go outside. They have their reasons why they did go outside. Those reasons work for them. These reasons work for us. They also feel that this is what Prabhupada wanted them to do. We feel this. So how are you going to resolve that? You're going to say, no, he's in Maya. He doesn't know what Prabhupada wants. I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's right. I don't think it'll get us, even if it is right, I don't think it's going to get us anywhere. I definitely am not trying to say it's okay to leave Iskcon. That's not my point. But I wanted to make this point clear because I don't think it was clear yesterday. And I didn't want to condemn anybody. I just wanted to make the point that we understand that Prabhupada wanted us to work within Iskcon, and that under the GBC, and that this movement was the vehicle which Prabhupada created for spreading Krishna consciousness. This movement is the vehicle that would be chased to Prabhupada that would be chaste to his mood, his mission, his desires. And that's what we're trying to do. Will that eventually, in 1,000 years, will this be the vehicle that represents Prabhupada the most? We hope it will. Is it possible another organization could represent him better? Anything's possible. But the theory is, the principle is, that if we stay united under a GBC, the potential or the hope that we would represent Prabhupada and maintain his teachings and institution would be most likely. If everybody leaves, then how's that going to happen? So I'm going to read some of your questions or comments. This wasn't... okay. Radhika was saying, sometimes we hear Guru say you can only go back to Godhead in Iskcon, and the context in one case was outside of Prabhupada's shelter, that there is no other path apart from Prabhupada. This is getting like really controversial. For us as followers of Prabhupada, that's our chastity. That our path back to Godhead is via Prabhupada and his instructions. But to say that if somebody leaves the shelter of Iskcon, they're not following Prabhupada, that's number one, it's an assumption. Of course, the assumption is based on the fact that Prabhupada wanted us to stay in Iskcon and not start our own organization. But even if they do that, from the way Prabhupada dealt with this other devotee, he said, if they're following the principles, then that's okay. So I think Prabhupada saw Iskcon as where principles are being followed. Jamuna and Dinatarani were criticized also when they went to start their own project. And they were saying this is an Iskcon, and that's when Prabhupada said, wherever two people come together and do kirtan or hear and chant, that's Iskcon. So he gave this broader definition. And it's difficult for us to question what relationship someone has with Prabhupada, and that Prabhupada would not take him back to Godhead. Like a lot of people say, well, if this and that happens, would this person go back to Godhead? How can we make that judgment, really? Because we've heard stories that Prabhupada came at the time of death to some of his disciples who not only left Iskcon to start, they didn't leave Iskcon to start another movement, they just left Iskcon for sense gratification, and Prabhupada came and saved them, and he still had a connection with them. So, this discussion is, I don't think this discussion is really so much of whether or not we could go back to Godhead if we stay within Iskcon, because I don't really feel that discussion is necessary. That's the connection of the disciple, whether they stay in or outside of Iskcon, that's between Prabhupada and that disciple. And if they're preaching and serving and chanting, they promised to chant 16 rounds, follow regular principles, they're still doing that. So that connection, how can that connection not be there? Because they left the institution. I see that more as a separate issue, that this is what Prabhupada wanted from that work in the institution, keep it together. That's very important. And Prabhupada tried to do that with Gaudiya Mata, and he couldn't, and so he started his own institution reluctantly. So, but I have so many godbrothers who, Iskcon is near and dear to them. It's the organization that they grew up in. It's the organization they dedicated their life to. But things happen in the organization that made it difficult for some individuals to stay inside, and I think we have to acknowledge that. And they're still chanting and following, so they're still connected with Prabhupada. For sure connected. Grinsa says, I think someone can if they follow Prabhupada, but we are so conditioned that without our Guru's mercy we can't understand what Prabhupada wants us to learn and the way he wants us to learn it. We will falter without mercy, yes. Well, both things are there. You want to understand Prabhupada and understand Prabhupada with help of your Guru. And so the point of this class is that we don't want to be in this position where we say, I don't understand Prabhupada, or I don't feel connected to Prabhupada, I only understand him through my Guru and feel connected to my Guru. Of course, you'll understand him through your Guru and feel connected to your Guru, but you should also understand Prabhupada. And the proof of that is he gave you all his books. If he didn't, if Prabhupada didn't write any books, or he just trained his disciples through lectures, no books, and he said, you write the books. Okay, then it really looks like he wants us to train our disciples through our books. Our lectures and books become more important. It's like he gave us the secrets, the insider secrets, now you go spread it. But Prabhupada was the one who wrote the books, so there's your foundation. So it's a problem, and it's going to be a huge problem in the future of Iskcon if devotees are joining Iskcon and they're not reading Prabhupada's books. Because Iskcon is Prabhupada, and without understanding Prabhupada, you can say you're in Iskcon, and you can say this devotee left Iskcon, but that's not really what Iskcon is. That it's not just you understand everything from your Guru. Of course, you will be Krishna conscious if you do, but the way you're going to be completely Krishna conscious in the broadest and most balanced sense, and the best member who can contribute to the welfare of Iskcon in the world is to understand Prabhupada, because that's what he wanted you to do. So someone can say, you left Iskcon, you're bad. And you can say, well, you're in Iskcon, you don't even read Prabhupada's books. You're bad. So, it's just one thing or the other. So, as Srila Prabhu said, Prabhupada's the preeminent and foundational Guru. Now, this is the Guru upon which everything is based. And this is the Guru who everyone should have a foundational relationship. Foundational relationship means this is the Guru with whom you should have a relationship which all your other relationships are based on. This is true north, this is the guiding point. And we have Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. So your Guru says something, but then Prabhupada says something. That's the sadhu in this case. And then the Shastra says, and you're trying to understand them together. What does it mean? And there's so many sadhus also who are representing Prabhupada. So you're trying to get a very holistic understanding of Prabhupada. And try to understand that in the future, when you're older, when you're my age, you're going to be in the point where you're thinking, okay, the next generation, that means your children, they're going to be the new leaders of Iskcon. So what am I giving them? And what you're giving them is only what you've gotten. So what did I get how much of Prabhupada am I able to give them? How much do I understand Prabhupada? Both in terms of what he taught, his siddhanta and his mission and his vision and his mood and his attitudes and what he wanted for Iskcon to be. How much do I understand that? Because if I don't understand that, it's possible they won't understand it. It's possible they could understand it through their own study. But the point is, you study it, you give it, you ask them to study it, so it just keeps going down. You imagine Christianity where Jesus is not important. Where nobody's really talking about Jesus, but they're talking about what this Pope said and what that Pope said and this saint said and that saint said. Could you imagine what that would be like? And nobody quotes Jesus. Nobody even really knows what Jesus said. They only know what St. Augustine said, or Origen said, or Pope Francis said. And nobody's really using the Bible, because the Bible's all Jesus, what Jesus said. Wouldn't that be weird? So I think that's a good example. So founder Acharya, everything's based on his teachings, on his position, and then so we try to represent that and understand that. So for all of you, you need to represent and understand that, because you're going to have to pass that down to the next generation. And just like, look at India today, right? We have this little joke. You look at pictures. There's the great-grandfather, then the grandfather, then your father, then there's you, and then there's your kids. And as you go down, you see how Western culture has infiltrated through all those pictures. So, your great-grandfather, he was super religious, did this, that you hear all these stories. He used to go to the temple 3 times a day since he was 3 years old, and he chanted in the Sringakavacha every morning, every evening, and he had, he was worshiping deities since he was 6, and read Bhagavad Gita 14 times before he actually learned how to read, and and then there's your grandfather who was it was very religious, but not so much. And then there's your father who kind of just went, to the temple sometimes and kind of really didn't know what was going on. He was, more involved in education and, becoming a lawyer or a doctor. And then there's you. And so don't you think that's possible? And then there's your kids, and then their grandkids are like, they have no idea, But by the time you get 4 or 5 generations, your grandkids have like got so little of what your great-grandfather had. So look at Iskcon that way. So if Prabhupada's a great-grandfather and we're the grandfather, and then there's you, the father, look at a few generations down. What's Iskcon? I don't know. Something, Prabhupada's movement. Who's Prabhupada? He was the gurus, everybody's guru then, and a bunch of hippies. I don't know, something like that, and Haribol, where's the pakoras? Yeah, well, he gave prasadam. Yeah, I like prasadam. So can't you see that happening? So, and then if you have all these sectarian ideas and all these wrong ideas, and everyone who's outside of Iskcon is a demon and they're not pleasing Prabhupada and this and that, then you just carry that down, and imagine in 4 or 5 generations you've got this like people who can't function, they're like, you're going to hell if you're not in Iskcon, it's right there, Where is it said that? Right here, and you interpret it, You know what I mean? So, I missed somebody's comment. Whose comment did I miss? Let's go back. Yes, we need Guru's guidance. And so the Guru is helping you understand Prabhupada. And the Guru is helping you become mature in your Krishna consciousness. So I'm going to go back. When outside of Prabhupada's shelter, there's no other... Yeah, that's true. You need Prabhupada's shelter. Talking about Krishna West? No, I wasn't. I'm going back to see what comment I missed. I don't see any comment. So I'm just going to read the comments, and if I missed your comment, it means I didn't get it, and you're going to write it again. I'm sure everybody's awake now. This is controversy. And I don't want to be misunderstood. I don't want to be like watering things down, saying, oh, he's saying, Iskcon's not important, this and that. What I'm saying is, all I'm saying is, let's be realistic. Let's look at human nature and look at history, and let's look and consider what's the best way to deal with this. And we know the best way to deal with this is for us to imbibe Prabhupada's instructions, to read Prabhupada's biographies, understand more about him, understand what his mission was, what his heart was, what he wanted, and then pass it down. Get it for yourself, because unless Prabhupada is in the center and we pass him down, generation after generation, where that is the foundation of relationship that everyone has, then it's going to be a problem. If your guru falls, if you have a very strong connection with Prabhupada, you'll make it. It's a difficult thing. It's a difficult situation. I've seen this, actually. I saw this with older devotees who had a very deep connection with Prabhupada. If you met these devotees, you would actually think they're Prabhupada disciples, but they're not. And just because they're so connected, they're so connected with Prabhupada and his mission, you would swear they're Prabhupada disciples. There's no way you'd know they weren't. And maybe like 5 years ago, one of their gurus stepped down, and I asked them, And they just said, I've got my connection with Prabhupada, I'm fine. It said it wasn't, it's really not that much different now because I'm so connected there. So that's really important. There are, for sure, sincere example Christian followers, saints who aspire for the love of God. When we hear only in Iskcon, that ignites disrespect, yeah. And quite some devotees. Well, there's an interesting situation which I think illustrates this point. It makes it obvious. There's one of my godbrothers, and he had done something to which he admits was wrong, a behavior that was wrong when he was younger, in his 30s. And so it was being dealt with in Iskcon, but it wasn't being dealt with properly or fairly. And it was causing the GBC actually to become divided over what to do. And it was creating lots and lots of problems. And he saw that it wasn't going to be resolved, and it was creating enmity amongst different devotees. So he thought, the best thing I can do is leave Iskcon, because once I leave Iskcon, it's not an issue. They don't have to deal with it. So that's what he did. He left Iskcon. He was an Iskcon guru, and he left Iskcon. So fundamentally, what that meant was that he can no longer speak in Iskcon temples. He can speak anywhere, anybody's home, any place they rent. He can take parikaramas. Iskcon devotees can hear from him, but he just can't speak. He's not officially Iskcon. So does that mean that when he made that decision, his spiritual life suffered? No, it was a decision. He was trying to do that to better serve Prabhupada because he saw there was no resolution. Does that mean that people coming to him aren't connected with Iskcon? He connects everyone with Iskcon. He just can't be there with them. So, the institutional considerations and how it evolves one's spiritual life are very fluid, and it's dynamic, and it's going to vary for different individuals. I know a devotee. This is just, I'm not making any judgments here. I just want you to know these things. There's a devotee. He came, he joined when I was in San Diego, and one of those devotees, very sincere, but very conditioned, who was always like up and down, and at one point he was down and he didn't go back up. And then I saw him about 7 years ago. He had one Gaudiya Vaishnava guru was visiting Alachua, and he was traveling with him, and he said that this Gaudiya Vaishnava guru saved me. I said, I was in total maya. I said, I didn't know what to do. And now you could see he was very, very Krishna conscious, hearing and chanting and association. I don't know how he's doing now. Someone could say, yeah, but how is he doing now? All I know is that he told me that this Gaudiya Vaishnava guru saved him. I was doing horribly, and he said, and so we can't deny that. Now, this Gaudiya Vaishnava guru is not working within Iskcon, is not directly, telling everybody to join Iskcon and go on book distribution. That would be nice if he did. We would want him to do that, but it's not what he's doing. But we can't deny the fact that he had saved this devotee, and actually I know for a fact that he saved many devotees who got alienated by Iskcon. When they got alienated by Iskcon, they left the Sangha devotees. When they left the Sangha of devotees, then you know what happens when you're not with devotees. This Gaudiya Vaishnava guru instilled faith that they had lost. And so can we say that that's not good? No. Can we say that it's wrong that he couldn't instill faith within Iskcon? He could try, but it's not guaranteed. So I just don't want devotees to look at situations in narrow and fanatical ways, because I don't think it's good for them, and I don't think it's good for others, and I don't think it's good for the future, because it's highly possible that in the future we could have an Iskcon, which is, if you're outside Iskcon, you're going to hell type thing. And that's not true. And no matter what, with all these other Gaudiya organizations, Prabhupada's going to be there. But in Iskcon, he's definitely going to be there. In these other organizations, we don't know in what respect he's going to be there. So the duty of Iskcon, yes, is to keep Prabhupada as central in everything. organizationally, philosophically, in every way we can. Someone could argue and say, philosophically, you don't have the Siddhanta right in what Prabhupada wanted. Maybe that's true. Maybe we need to go further. Maybe they can help us. But in terms of an organization, the books we distribute, the principles we follow within the, that's all going to, hopefully, it will be Prabhupada-centric. And it's going to be Prabhupada-centric because all of you understand Prabhupada and his mood, his mission, his spicing, as I say, how the organization should function, all these things you understand so that you can present it to the next generation. So that's very important. And you're also going to help the next generation understand that not everyone can exist within Iskcon, and that's okay, and they can still be devotees, and they're still making other people Krishna conscious. And, you know, I have Siksha disciples that are initiated outside of Iskcon. I have aspiring disciples. No, I have Siksha disciples that they're in a city and there's no Iskcon temple. So they go to the local Gaudiya Math temple. But they're loyal to me. So, is it right, is it wrong? I'm not making a judgment, it just is. And that they have faith in me is good. And I can help them understand Prabhupada. And I don't think by going to that Gaudiya organization, if it's the only temple in their city, they're necessarily going to lose faith in Prabhupada. I mean, of course, it could happen, or they could misunderstand. But because they're connected with me, they're not going to misunderstand. If they do misunderstand, I can, clarify that. Radhika says, I have friends who find a lot of comfort in some devotees outside of Iskcon. Some Iskcon devotees even have family members practicing outside Iskcon. It's so important that we encourage each other to come closer to Krishna, even if some other path, and there can always be friendly philosophical discussions are common. Yeah, the point of what I'm saying is, it's a reality. We can't turn our back on the reality. We maybe don't like the reality. Maybe we wish the reality were different, but it isn't reality. When I was reading what you were saying, I was thinking, there's a devotee here who's gradually leaned towards Ritvik over the years, and he first was just saying, don't put so much. We don't need to put so much emphasis on guru and disciple. We need to put most of the emphasis on Prabhupada, establishing that relationship. And then if someone feels that that's their prominent relationship, then they'll be initiated, but that initiating guru is necessary, they'll respect him and so forth, but the predominant siksha will come from Prabhupada. That was his position, and then gradually, I think he's gone full Ritvik for whatever reason, I don't know. But his son is initiated by a Gaudiya Vaishnava outside of Iskcon. So that's reality, isn't that? And it's like, it's just the way it is. And many of those devotees are initiated by that Gaudiya Vaishnava outside of Iskcon are sons and daughters of Iskcon devotees. And those devotees come to the temple and they function within Iskcon because they like Iskcon. So, there are all kinds of situations, and people who are initiated by Prabhupada that don't like Iskcon, people who are initiated by someone outside of Iskcon who like Iskcon, who work inside of Iskcon. So we're going to have to learn how to navigate these waters because they're always going to be there. And if we just want to make it black and white, you're outside, you're bad, you're inside, you're good. In some legislative way, we have to do that. But in other ways, we can't see it that way because it's not like that. It's not a guarantee. You stay in Iskcon, you'll be Krishna conscious. You're with some other organization, you won't be. So Nirmal Chandra says, does this mean we should not attend classes, take darshan from, ask advice, or even take shelter from a bona fide Vittama guru outside of Iskcon? What are the do's and don'ts? That's a really difficult question to answer. Now, I can just tell you my general experience with this, that half the answer is, yes, you'll benefit, half the answer is, and it could be a problem. So, why? Because they're going to say something your guru doesn't say, you're going to hear something that doesn't seem that Prabhupada said, they're going to tell you that Iskcon doesn't understand this or that. And so it's not just like you're going hearing pure Krishna Katha. It's mixed with all kinds of politics and mixed with all kinds of emotions and this and that. So generally what we've seen is if you're going to go there, just stay there. Not that we're telling you to go there, but if you go there and stay there, yeah, then you're fine. But if, for many people, if they're in Iskcon, it's too difficult because there's too many things in it that put doubts in Iskcon. They may even put doubts in your own guru. You might hear like, well, you know, unless you're on this level, you can't be a guru. Then you start to think, is my guru on that level? He doesn't seem to be. In fact, he said that he isn't. So now what? You know, so that's the problem. So it's like, you know, it's like asking me a question. If I go to the gym, or if I go on this festival, well, okay, let's do more. If I go on this festival program, every day we do Harinam, and then we do so many services, will it be good for my Krishna consciousness? I said, yeah. I said, but problem is, there's a woman there, and you've told me you're very attracted to her. And she's married. So better you don't go on that festival program because it's not going to be healthy for you. So it's something like that. That's what I've seen. Now, is it bad for everyone? I gave examples of devotees it was good for. But they took shelter there. That's where they went, that's where they stayed. And so there was no polarization. It's just they stayed there. So, does that happen to everybody? No. Some people go, it's good. Some people join through Iskcon, they go there, they take initiation there. And some people work in Iskcon, and you know, it's like there's so many varieties. So to say, is it going to be good or bad? All I can say is, there's a chance it won't be good. And in questions like this, you have to ask your guru. Now, here's the little history, Nirmal Chandra. Some gurus want to be liberal, and they know that this association of these Gaudiya Vaishnavas is valuable. And so when their disciples said, so-and-so is coming, can I listen? Their gurus would say, okay, because they'd see that this devotee is advanced. Do you know what happened? One incident that happened. A guru gave permission, but the guru said, don't tell anybody I gave you permission because I don't want everyone to go there. But you're more advanced, I think you could benefit from hearing from him. So this devotee went to that guru, and it became known, somehow or other, that she went there. And so generally in Iskcon, that guru is taboo. So now all the other disciples were very upset. Why did you go and hear from that guru? But her guru couldn't say that it was okay for her to go because then that would be validating that guru. And so this was a very private thing that he thought this one devotee could go. Created havoc, and she ended up leaving because the guru couldn't say, I told her to go. He didn't want to say that publicly. And then the other disciples of his turned against her, and she then turned against him for not protecting her. And so it created that mess. And there are other stories like that. There are good stories and there are bad stories. So, should you try to climb Mount Everest? Well, you might die and you might not. So the fact that you might die, probably better don't go. You know, if there were, let's say, I said, Nirmal Chandra, I need you to write a book on such and such a topic, and the only one who knows it is this Gaudiya guru. Go and ask him these 10 questions, bring them, answers to me, I want to look at them. And that, yeah, fine, great. And you might say, wow, that was amazing, I learned so much, that was so powerful. Yeah, that's different than being dedicated to that person and connected with that organization, and then, you know what I mean? So, it depends who you're talking about, depends on the relationship, it depends on so many things, right? But generally, historically, that when devotees went to other Gaudiya Vaishnavas, generally, or often it created problems. Either they left Iskcon or whatever. many devotees benefit from that association. Many devotees are very dedicated to Prabhupada, and they read books of these other Gaudiya Acharyas, and it helps them, and they're still dedicated to Iskcon. Iskcon doesn't really want us to read those books. Iskcon wants to keep everything focused on Prabhupada, but it's a big world. The books are out there, the internet's out there, we see things. Devotees don't want to. Devotees feel like, I can read this and I'm loyal to Iskcon. So Iskcon can't really control someone who's been a devotee 50 years and say don't read this, when something they wrote may clarify an issue that we're having difficulty understand. So these things are going on, but generally, from what I've seen, there are liabilities there. And I don't want to minimize anybody. And someone could argue and say, well, maybe it was good this person left Iskcon. Maybe they weren't doing well in Iskcon. It's hard to say. Can we really say that? Yeah, maybe in some cases they were going down, they were offensive, they found shelter outside, it was good for them. Okay. I don't want to say that's not true. And because it is true in some cases, but I would say generally, at least there's liabilities that we should understand. So generally we say better you don't go there. But in some cases, if you have no other place to go and they're Iskcon friendly, yeah. But if they're not Iskcon friendly, you're going to hear something negative about your guru or Iskcon. It's not going to be good. So this is a very difficult question to answer, because while I'm answering it, I'm thinking of my godbrothers who you could go to, who are outside of Iskcon, who you could actually learn a lot from. But something may transpire where you lose some faith at the same time, which would be really devastating for your Krishna consciousness. Now, if you're a new devotee and you go there, are you not going to be Krishna conscious? No, you will be. If you're an Iskcon devotee and you go there and you're not initiated and you take shelter and you get initiated, is that bad? Well, we could say it's not bad. We'd say, in some cases, maybe there was no one in Iskcon you had faith in, so then it was good. So you can't make it black and white. But if you're already initiated in Iskcon, at this point in Iskcon, these other Gaudiya Math godbrothers, or with their own, not Gaudiya Math, but their own Gaudiya organizations, if Iskcon just said, yeah, it's okay, and we had conversations and we supported one another, yeah, it could work, and you could benefit. But right now, politically speaking, it makes it harder because there's not so much support from either side. And if we don't support it, then it may cause them to be antagonistic. And why aren't they supporting me? Why are they criticizing me? And then they will criticize us. And so then you're caught in the middle. That's the problem. So that's a tricky issue. And generally, what I've seen, the result is not good. That's what I've seen. But like Radhika says, disrespect is never a solution. But generally I've seen it's confusing. Maybe in 50 years when you're a mature devotee and you hear, it's like no problem. You're connected with Prabhupada, you're connected with your guru, you hear other things, you consider, you might hear something said, Prabhupada didn't say it that way, but I appreciate everything else they said, and you're unscathed. It's okay. You learned something, you benefited, they were visiting your city, but then if you're a senior devotee and you go hear from them, you set a precedent and other devotees are thinking we should go, it's just complicated. It complicates it. I have one godbrother, when this Gaudiya guru was coming, he said, I'd actually like to hear from him. And this godbrother is very learned, and if anything is wrong against Prabhupada, he immediately knows. But there are other things he could learn. He said, but I can't go because they'll take pictures. And they'll show the pictures on the internet that so-and-so was here, honoring our guru. And he said, I don't want to be in that situation. Then people get on his case, or it sets a precedent for others, you see. So it's a complicated issue. So Radhika says, we're fixed in the path and encourage others in their own path. Being best version of yourself will encourage and attract sincere souls whenever the path they're on. Yeah, and a lot of my godbrothers have noted rightly that the attraction for people to leave Iskcon was not always because of the attraction of others outside of Iskcon. They had something better, but something was lacking in Iskcon. They weren't satisfied. And we could say, well, it's their fault, but it's better we take it as our fault. They weren't getting nourished in Iskcon in a way they needed to be nourished, or they weren't being personally dealt with, or they weren't getting the higher Siddhanta they wanted. Whatever it was, it made these other organizations more attractive. And you will see that as Iskcon becomes stronger, as devotees become happier, their inclination to go outside of Iskcon will lessen. They won't need to go out. So a lot of people left during a time when Iskcon was weak, when a lot of gurus were leaving, and people, when a lot of gurus were leaving, especially certain gurus who we thought would never leave, some devotees started thinking, maybe my guru will also leave. There was no indication that their guru would ever have a problem or would ever leave, but they thought, well, it didn't seem like there was any indication these other gurus would fall or leave, and they did. So then people started doubting their own guru, and then these, Gaudiya gurus who were like 80 years old, sannyasis for 50 years, the devotees started to think, here is real shelter. This person is not going to fall, and this person can answer questions that my guru can't answer. And so that just became very attractive, right? So now we're becoming that age. We're starting to have that Siddhantic understanding. We can say, we haven't fallen for 50 years. So it's leveling things out a little bit. But in the weakened times of Iskcon, going outside was very attractive because Iskcon was crumbling in many ways and confused in many ways. Padma says, never forget there's only one God, one Purusha, Supreme Consciousness, all forms and names, there's manifestations. Brought into existence for a cause and reasons. Rumi said, the lamps are different, but the light is the same. Om Shanti Shanti. There's a song, a Sikh song, that in every village, when you come to their village, they'll say, I have the best water. Best water's in my village. You go to the next village, and this water's special. Next one, no, nobody has water like this. And what's funny about it is they're all getting water from the same source, but they think their village has the best water. So, you've got to be careful. I don't know if you already answered this, Radha Priya, but I have friends that have more than 20 years in Krishna consciousness and they don't want to have initiation. They think there are no qualified gurus. Qualified gurus to give initiation, what could be the problem for spiritual life for them? They think nobody's qualified to give initiation? It sounds like, there's plenty of qualified people. It sounds like maybe a misunderstanding or a lack of faith. Prabhupada's qualified. This was the basis of Ritvik. There's nobody qualified. Prabhupada's qualified. Let him do it. Anyone who follows their guru in their life and teaches what their guru said and can teach you what their guru said is a guru. That's the definition of guru. So maybe they misunderstand the qualifications of guru, or maybe they lack faith in the principle of guru. I don't know. I'd have to talk to them. There could be other reasons. Comment yesterday. Discussing some other devotees who also had some questions. Yesterday's comment. I have to go down. Hold on. It's a long. Whoops. We're discussing with some other devotees this. What is this? I want to bring it up again. Okay, this is this. Perhaps we just misunderstand. It seems that what you were saying to be attached to Prabhupada more than to your guru, because from the disciple, my guru is special, and nothing can replace. Even Acharya can't replace. For me, and I feel for many others, in my generation, my guru is my guru, and Prabhupada is Prabhupada, the Acharya. Yeah, that's okay. For Srila Prabhupada disciples, it was the same person, and so attachment. Don't see your guru as separate from Prabhupada. And don't see that your relationship with your guru can be established properly without you having a foundational relationship with Prabhupada. That's the point. See Prabhupada is the foundation of your relationship with your guru, that you have to have that strong. And then your relationship with your guru will be strong. Otherwise, your relationship with your guru will be sentimental, and your guru doesn't smile at you one day and you want to, like, renounce him. So we don't want those kinds of things. Like if you have a foundational relationship with Prabhupada, that will help you understand Krishna consciousness. It'll help you understand what your guru, who your guru is, what a disciple is. Everything will be understood. And that will be your guiding light, and that's what will keep you steady. All right? So let's say your guru has trouble. Let's say he breaks a principle or does something he shouldn't do. Now what? Well, you have Prabhupada, but if Prabhupada is not strong within your life, you'll feel like you have nothing, and then you'll leave, and that happened. Now, I can't say this is 100% true, but what I have observed is that the more prominent the guru was in the life of the disciple, the more those disciples suffered when that guru fell. The more prominent Prabhupada was in the life of the disciples, the less those disciples suffered, the more steady they were when their gurus fell. You have to understand, you have to understand, it's just, out of 11 of the initial gurus, I think 7 of them fell down. And they fell down within a relatively short period of time. So either fell down or they did something. They were suspected of doing something, of falling down. So this is happening in a short period of time within Iskcon. So, it's quite common. And those who had more shelter in Prabhupada were able to deal with this in a better way. Those who didn't became bitter, angry, left, gave up Krishna consciousness. Like there should be nothing that would ever cause you to give up Krishna consciousness. So you have this solid foundation in your relationship with Prabhupada. It's always there. Nothing can shake you. Even if your guru doesn't fall down, he's going to leave the planet someday. That's going to shake you. So it's, everything was my guru, that's fine. But you need the stability with your relationship with Prabhupada. So that will keep you going. That's important. I like the way Sureshwar puts it, the preeminent and foundational guru for everyone in Iskcon. The preeminent and foundational. So meditate on preeminent and foundational guru for everyone in Iskcon. This is where your foundation lies. Your Krishna conscious foundation lies within Prabhupada's teachings. And your guru is simply expanding upon that. And naturally, because he's alive, I want to read something to you. Hey, this is good. Listen to this. This was by Ravindra Sarup in that book he wrote, Founder Acharya. This is what he said. And because living gurus predominate the lives of their disciples by their presence, he's not saying this in a negative way, he's saying it in a positive way. We need to work more towards experiencing Prabhupada in his words. In other words, the gurus are there, they're pulling you by the ear, they're instructing you, they're present in your life, there's an emotional bond. So he's saying that the game needs to be balanced a little bit. And so in order to balance this, so the relationship with your guru, which is during the zonal guru era, obliviated to one degree or another the relationship with Prabhupada, or at least it relativized it. That Prabhupada's kind of became an historical figure and now everything is the zonal guru. We don't want that to happen. So he's saying we need to work to more towards experiencing Prabhupada in his words. In this way, his presence will not diminish after the departure of all his disciples. So in other words, how do we keep Prabhupada in the center? How do we keep his presence prominent after he leaves, or after we leave? So we are pushing the instructions of Prabhupada. Understand these instructions. The more you understand Prabhupada's instructions, I think the more you will appreciate what I'm teaching you. Because you'll see, when, or what your guru is teaching you. You see, when or what you're hearing from anyone. When you hear something from a senior devotee, you hear something from your guru, and it's something that you already understand, but now you understand it more. You say, oh yeah, Prabhupada said this, I understand, but now I understand it more. So now you've gone deeper, but you have this foundation in what Prabhupada said, and then your guru is explaining it more deeply. I don't know if that makes sense. For Prabhupada disciples, it was the same person and the same attachment. But for us, it's different. Understand that we can have a deep relationship with Prabhupada, and perhaps what you are saying is that we should, but from my perspective, you cannot replace relationship with my guru. It should add to it. It won't replace it. It should add to it. See, it depends on the person. You won't replace it, but how it adds to it, it will depend on the person. For some, Prabhupada will be the most prominent in their lives, and their guru will be that person who connected them to Prabhupada. That's how they'll see their guru. It depends. So I'm not saying one's right and wrong, but at least if there's some balance there, that connection with your guru is connection with Prabhupada. What is then the essence of the living guru? He can, as one person said, he can pull you by the ear. That's the essence. The book is passive. You read the book, you do it or don't. Your guru is there, do it. Now, this is your problem. So the guru pulls you by the ear. That's the benefit. But you need both. The relationship with living guru, your guru will always be special. Yeah, it always will be. But it doesn't mean your relationship with Prabhupada isn't special. It's just, it'll come in a different way. But this is where we're all getting our instruction from Prabhupada. And Krishna Karshani wrote me, and she asked a question that may come up in some people's minds, is that, Prabhupada said that we cannot connect with Srila Bhaktisiddhanta unless we connect with him. And then someone may say, well, how is it that we can connect with Prabhupada? Well, and Prabhupada said, don't. You will understand Bhaktisiddhanta's books through my books. But Prabhupada gave you his books, so he's not creating that condition that you can only understand Prabhupada through Prabhupada's disciples. There may be things that you will not understand unless you hear from the disciples, but Prabhupada gave you his books. So he gave you that connection, and there's this huge, deep connection with any guru, with any acharya, through reading their instructions. It's called siksha. So you're hearing Prabhupada's instructions, naturally there's this connection. And Prabhupada is present in his instructions. So in answer to your question, I think Rabindra Swarup said it. We have to bring Prabhupada's presence more in to our lives, and we do that through his words. And you read Prabhupada's books 10 minutes every week. That's not, and listen to one lecture a year. Then naturally your guru will be the most prominent because you're not getting that siksha connection with Prabhupada. Whereas if you read Prabhupada's books every day for an hour or two, you listen to his lectures once, twice a week, or morning walk or something, you'll see the difference. You'll understand, you'll be able to answer your question. I won't have to answer it for you. You'll answer it by experience. You'll say, yes, Prabhupada is very important. This instruction is very important. And And the other point that I was making that's super important is that you have to give this, you have to give Prabhupada to the next generation. If you don't have it, how will you give it? Katie says, I want to ask you this question for a while. Was Srila Prabhupada more strict or more merciful? He was more merciful, but if he were a sannyasi, he would, he'd be tough on you because you're taking that position now. You know, if you're a GBC, a temple president, and you do something wrong, yeah. For general devotees, he was very merciful. But what he was most strict about or most concerned about is that we wouldn't misunderstand the philosophy or change it or come up with a new idea. Because if we come up with a new idea of the philosophy, then what's going to happen in the future? Then that purity that Prabhupada gave, it's lost. So he was most concerned, most strict about that. And he didn't want us to interpret things so that in the future his message would be lost, which is why he wrote his books. Of course, we can misunderstand his books. Let's continue. During last year's Baltic Vaishnava Festival, we had a shocking fact spreading amongst devotees. Sarvatma Prabhu is not direct Prabhupada disciple. Many devotees didn't have a clue for years. Yeah, so that proves my point. Because he's a senior devotee and because he's attached to Prabhupada, it's just like he's a Prabhupada disciple, which is the point. You don't have to be initiated to be a disciple of Prabhupada. It's all in how you connect and how you understand, yeah. There are many senior devotees like that, like Sarvatma, that you would think are Prabhupada's disciples because they're so attached to Prabhupada. It doesn't mean they're not attached to their gurus and this and that, but you know, their preeminent and foundational connection is very strong with Prabhupada. And there's nothing wrong with that, and their gurus are happy. You know, if you grow up and you're very strong and you're getting, you know, so much strength from Prabhupada's books and so on, you think your guru is going to say, well, what about me? I feel neglected. You know, your gurus don't have low self-esteem. They won't feel neglected if you're emerging yourself in Prabhupada. You know, and like, if you look at a lot of, wow, you know what just happened? We just got an alert. Someone in the area, there was a problem. Is that amazing? Yeah. So your guru is going to be very happy. And I was just saying, you know, so many of the things that I'm teaching are just ways of understanding how to be more connected to Prabhupada and what he wanted. So that's important. Otherwise, you know, we lived through a period. We lived through a period in Iskcon where everything was the Diksha Guru, and to the point that it became sectarian, to the point that, you know, people were forcing you to accept Diksha from this Guru, and it was really blurring Prabhupada's position. And you know, we don't want that to happen, and it still exists in some places to some degree. Yeah, so that's part of the problem in unifying a movement. If there's, you know, if you're going to make Prabhupada the center, it has to be foundational. So Venerati was saying, good fences make good neighbors. Well, that was the decision of the GBC, that if someone wants to go outside of Iskcon, let them go and be, you know, take initiation outside there. It would be better. But what we're finding is that many devotees can jump the fence and not, you know, get caught on the fence. So I don't think, you can't really legislate this, but you definitely don't want people coming to your temple telling the guests to leave your temple and come to our programs at the other organization. You want mutual respect, for sure. Hare Krishna, Jackie. If Srila Prabhupada wouldn't teach his disciples, we wouldn't have our Guru Maharaj. Our Guru Maharaj's only teachings what Prabhupada taught us, yes. That's what we need to have a relationship. With Srila Prabhupada, first and foremost, Because say, for example, in 30 years, it will be us who will be called senior devotees, exactly. And us doing the spreading of Krishna consciousness. Yeah. That's my whole point. If you're not deeply grounded in your relation with Prabhupada, then what are you going to give people in 30 years? Your guru won't be here. You can give him his books, you can say this will help you, but the foundation has to be Prabhupada. And then after the foundation is there, I say, okay, and also read this and also read that. Or we might write a book and say, read this book first. It's not Prabhupada's, but it's Prabhupada's philosophy and it's directing you to Prabhupada. So, in some way Prabhupada's still there. Jackie says, everyone should have a relationship with Prabhupada so that you will understand Krishna consciousness and why we follow Guru. Yeah. You could have a sentimental relationship with your Guru if you don't fully understand the position of Guru. I think what Radhika is speaking about, this problem we might have, at least this is my experience, because we have a wrong idea about personalism. We still expect to experience Prabhupada in a more external way, like we experience another person, but association and in general personality of Prabhupada is something deeper than, yeah. So the problem is, and we had this problem when Prabhupada left, is how to associate with Prabhupada when he's not with us. I mean, we could see him. He came, we saw him, we had that association. Then he left, and now we have to figure out how do we get the association that we had personally when he's not personally present and still call it personal association. And that, at least for me, took many years to realize. And then you start to understand that his presence is not limited to 3 dimensions. That you can pray to him, that you can feel and experience him and connect with him in varieties of ways, through serving, through reading his books, through helping other people read his books, and so forth. So it's not just a matter of intellectualizing it, it's actually a matter of experiencing it in your service. And so it's going to take time. I can't really explain. I can explain that Prabhupada's present in his picture, in his words, in his service, and so forth. But it's something you really have to experience. And so, yeah, the living presence of the Guru is different. You'll experience it in one way. In Prabhupada's presence, you will experience it in a different way. And it's not in 3-dimensional space. With your Guru, you see him in a physical form. And Prabhupada, you're not going to see him that way, but it's there, and the guidance will be there. The more you try to connect, the more you pray. So you just have to learn that. And as you become more advanced, it'll happen. Vainarati says, although I myself have a problem with that as well, and even when I read Prabhupada's books, I feel like my relationship with Shastra, with Bhagavatam deepens, but not with Prabhupada. It's like I cannot still get a grasp of what the person Bhagavatam Prabhupada is. So maybe it'll take time. Prabhupada's a transcendental personality. Or maybe you're trying to grasp him in a preconceived, maybe you have a round hole you want to put him in, but he can't fit in that round hole. So maybe you just try to accept him without trying to grasp him. And think of, maybe this will help. When Prabhupada was I like to think of it this way, when Prabhupada was envisioning spreading Krishna consciousness, he was kind of envisioning us. Europeans, Americans becoming devotees. So, you becoming a devotee and engaging in Krishna consciousness is kind of like the fulfillment of Prabhupada's vision. And so he's very happy that you as a Westerner have become a devotee. And, when he's writing his books, and Bhaktisiddhanta said, Western people, they're intellectual, they'll appreciate these books. And so, think Prabhupada was writing his books, he was thinking of you. He's happy that you're reading this. And he's happy you're part of his mission, and he's happy that you're helping to make other people Krishna conscious. So, when you're doing something to serve another person, then you're really on their team. So you're really on Prabhupada's team. Anyone who's serving is on Prabhupada's team, and therefore you're connected. So you could feel that connection by understanding that, well, you're this was Prabhupada's mission, and Prabhupada said, I can't do this alone. And therefore, you're part of the team, and now you're on Prabhupada's team, and we're all on Prabhupada's team, and he appreciates it. So that way you can experience Prabhupada. Arthur says, sometimes I feel that sharing Krishna consciousness with Srila Prabhupada's books is a bit too much for a start. Many times I give or indicate Srila Prabhupada's disciples' book. Another controversial question. I give or indicate Prabhupada's disciples, all good with thought. I mean, you're never going to get everybody to agree on this, but the idea of sharing another book is so that they will learn about Prabhupada and become more interested in Prabhupada's books. And it's true, as Kali Yuga progresses, it takes some spiritual advancement to appreciate Prabhupada's books. Even some of our devotees in Iskcon don't appreciate it that much, as much as they should or could. And so, it takes time. But those are like the foundational books. That's what we refer to. That's where everything is. And then the more someone becomes Krishna conscious, generally the more they become interested in Prabhupada's books. In one sense, you could say the best way to distribute books is make devotees, and then devotees will buy sets. So, you make 100 devotees this year, you can sell 100 sets of books, because they'll all want the books. So I'm also writing a book now, which is introductory in nature. And so the hope is that people will become more interested in Krishna consciousness, and gradually, as they become interested in Krishna consciousness, naturally there's Prabhupada's books, and then they'll be in a better place to understand them. So that's another approach. Some people can understand them directly. Some books are easier to understand for people who are not so spiritually inclined. Some people can understand Bhagavad Gita directly, some cannot. They'll need time. Maybe in 10 years they'll take it off the shelf and then they'll read it. Who knows? Or maybe, like Prabhupada said, they understand one verse. That's all they need to understand is one verse. That was good enough. Okay, they understand one verse. And they become devotees. So, this question is debated, but, I think the ultimate answer is do what you think is best, do what you see that works the best, and do what's right. And, sometimes, it's a difficult question to answer. Because sometimes someone might say, well, I don't want to give this book, because in this book it says women are less intelligent, and if they read this woman, who could be a great devotee, once she reads this, she'll not want to be a devotee, and, if she reads it a year later after she's chanting, and she'll be okay, she'll understand it. So is that true? Yeah, what you say is true. If she reads it, she won't be. Should we not give her Bhagavad Gita? That's a decision you'll have to make. If you say, I know she'll be a devotee, but I know I have to spoon feed her. And she's going to be a great devotee, and she's a powerful woman, and she could do so much. And you read in Vishaka's book, she said, when she first met Prabhupada, she was an atheist. So, if Prabhupada said, we didn't go to the moon and women are less intelligent and you should just serve your husband, that may not have been the best thing to tell her, right? So, these are real issues we're all going to have to deal with, and future generations are going to have to deal with. And some devotees just deal with it now unofficially in the best way they feel. And they're like, look, if she can't accept this point, she doesn't deserve to be a devotee. This is what Prabhupada said, so just give her Prabhupada's words. And she'll read the other words, she'll become purified. So that's somebody's decision. Someone else's decision is, no, I'll give her this version, this devotee's Bhagavad Gita. I don't want her to read this women less intelligent now, because it's going to prevent her from going further. And we can't ask Prabhupada, say, Prabhupada, could you, I think we should remove this from Bhagavad Gita and remove this from Bhagavatam, because people are reading this and they could become devotees, and they're not. We can't assume what Prabhupada would say. Some would say, well, if you talk to him, he would say, okay, understanding that it's preventing people, it's not a central issue, we don't have to put it there. Someone may say, no, it is a central issue. He wants it there, But whatever the case is, it's there. So, these are decisions we're all going to have to make. Right? Thank you, that might help. Otherwise, I feel very confused because even translating Prabhupada's books, I don't really feel much relationship with him, but meditating on how he would feel about that might, yeah, you're on his team. That might help, yeah. You're doing his service. He's like, his books are the most important thing, and you're translating his books. I mean, like, how could you not feel close? I think that not feeling close just might be mixed up with your own, self-perception that how could a fallen soul like me ever be like on Prabhupada's team, close. So, but you are on his team, and just meditate on the fact that you're doing like intimate service for Prabhupada, and he's pleased. And I think you'll feel that. Happy Janmashtami. Don't overdo it with halva. Yeah, okay. I will not overdo it with halva. I haven't overdone it with halva for about 40 years, honestly. But I did overdo it. I did overdo it when I was a brahmachari. Okay, so let's stop now. We went a long time. Can't give class tomorrow because tomorrow here is Janmashtami, and that will be, and it may be Janmashtami for you also. So let's keep Janmashtami, keep you absorbed in what you're doing. Of course, I could give class on Janmashtami about Janmashtami tomorrow. All right, I'll ask. No, but that won't work because that'll be like 8:15 in Australia. It's not going to work. They'll all be at the temple, and it's not going to work the next day. So maybe we'll do Wednesday. We'll keep you posted. Okay? Yeah, Mother Vishaka. Mother Vishaka lives here in Alachua. So we just took prasadam last week for Radhapriya's birthday. Okay, so we'll keep you all posted. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Go Premanandi. Hari Hari Hari.